baby. I am back. I missed all of you. I'm going to tell you that right now, but I am fully recharged and I'm going to be crushing it on my daily reports again. In today's report, Doug Ford and Mark Carney's honeymoon ended. And new polls show that over half of Canadians have no faith in Mark Carney being able to negotiate anything, not even a win, but anything with Donald Trump. How catastrophic is that? And because of all these failures adding up, the bought and paid for, completely bought off mainstream media is so desperate right now to protect their master, Mark Carney. You are not going to believe what they're doing now. All I have to say is completely unhinged. And the Liberals have a sneaky little plan in order to replace Pierre Poilievre. Who are they trying to find? The Mark Carney, Doug Ford breakup might be the establishment pushing a ball in motion. But unfortunately for the establishment, it's not going to work because of people like me exposing their plan. Let's get into this report. Let's start off the show with, where was I? Because of safety concerns traveling with my family, who knows, right? But now that I'm back, I just came back from Vietnam for 3 weeks. And all I have to say is the Vietnamese love America. Check out this shirt that's sold everywhere in Vietnam. Good morning, Vietnam, making Vietnam great again. The first thing that I was looking for when I got to Vietnam was, where is all of that gender rice? You know, the gender rice that the Liberals invested $8.2 million for gender just rice, low carbon rice in Vietnam. Well, I'm going to tell you something right now. I didn't find that gender rice, but what I did find is a 20-pound bag of rice was $1 Canadian, while we go to the store and spend $30 or $40 Canadian for the same rice. But I know what people are going to say. They're going to say, well, isn't rice made in Vietnam? So of course it's going to be cheap. But the same could be said that isn't oil come from Canada? Why are we spending $2 a liter for fuel? Oh yeah, and how much is fuel in Vietnam? It was $1 per liter, and they have zero fuel in Vietnam. They have to import all of their gasoline into the country, and they're just paying $1 a liter. Couple more observations about Vietnam. I didn't see one person bent over. You know how they are downtown East Side? There wasn't one person. I also didn't see a single homeless person. The people actually take care of their own people. It was actually refreshing to see. This is a high trust society. All I have to say is, if you ever have an opportunity to go somewhere, go to Vietnam. Not only that, is, for example, we had 16 people at a restaurant, unlimited food, unlimited drinks. And when the bill came, I was thinking this thing's gonna be a couple $1,000 if this was in Canada. The bill was $216 for unlimited food and drinks at a restaurant. The cost of living is like 80 to 85% less in Vietnam than it is in Canada. Plus, when you buy things, there's no tax. Whatever it says, that is exactly what you're going to pay. The most delicious coffee you've ever had in your life. And I'm a huge coffee fan. I drink coffee all day. They have the best coffee I've ever tasted for $2, and that's expensive for them. You could probably find cheaper. There's a chain called Highlands. Best coffee I've ever had. The Liberals do not want you to travel to Vietnam, because when you see how they live in Vietnam and the high trust society and the affordability, you're going to look back at Canada and say, we are getting robbed here. We are getting scammed. Life in Canada is so unaffordable When you travel abroad, you go, what is going on in Canada? Well, that leads me to today's report. Let's get into it. Let's start off with Doug Ford and Mark Carney's relationship. Their honeymoon is officially over.
There is a standoff between the federal and Ontario governments this morning as we look at Ottawa and Toronto live. This after the feds killed the Ford government's plan to expand Toronto's Island Airport. And sources tell us provincial Conservatives are now, in response, pulling their support for Ottawa's high-speed rail project. Megan Fitzpatrick looking at all of this. Megan, the trigger for all of this is the feds killing that airport plan. Was the Ford government surprised by it?
Yeah, that news broke late Friday night, David, just hours after Premier Ford had been at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Gordie Howe Bridge alongside Federal Infrastructure Minister Gregor Robertson. So that news coming from Ottawa Friday night that it would not support Ontario's plan to expand Toronto's Billy Bishop Airport to allow jets to land. This is something that Premier Doug Ford has been pushing very strongly. And we're told this came as a surprise to the Premier and his government because there had been an agreement between the two levels of government that if Ottawa supported the Billy Bishop expansion plan, that Ontario would support Ottawa's plan to build this proposed high-speed rail line connecting Toronto and Quebec City. One source is telling CBC that Ontario's support for the Alto project is now in jeopardy.
Don't you actually love seeing this relationship crumble? Mark Carney and Doug Ford's honeymoon is officially over. After Doug Ford for the past year has been on his hands and knees sucking up to Mark Carney. No airport for Doug, no high-speed rail for Mark Carney. I don't think there was going to be a high-speed rail anyway. The whole thing is an absolute joke. But maybe this breakup is for a reason. Because I heard that Doug Ford wants the top job as the Conservative leader. He's not the only one, but this is just so convenient. Who else wants the top job? It looks like Jason Kenney wants to step up to the plate. Former Alberta Premier wants to scrap supply management. Why would he come out and say that? Unless he was doing a soft launching for his campaign to replace Pierre Poilievre. The thing is with this Doug Ford and Jason Kenney, these people are liberal. They're not conservative. So that's why I say the liberals want to replace Pierre Poilievre with these liberals. Here's the thing, us Canadians are not going to get fooled. Jason Kenney got booted out of Alberta. Nobody wants a liberal light in Canada. You're not going to believe this. Doug Ford and David Eby want to impose a tax or stop shipping crude oil to the United States. You're not going to believe this.
Well, Doug Ford and other premiers, Premier Eby of British Columbia apparently, and some others have sort of hinted, in the case of Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, that we should do a tit for tat, that we should block energy supplies to the United States, as well as, of course, potash and other very important critical minerals, not just for the United States, but for Canada.
We must have some of the dumbest people in government imaginable. Think about this. Have they ever looked at a pipeline map? If you take a look over here, Doug Ford, there is no west-east pipeline. So that means Canadian oil has to go into the United States. Then it goes back into Ontario to service the East Coast. So if you decide that you want to stop sending oil to the United States, what you are doing is shooting yourself in the foot because there will be no gas in your province. All I have to say is, how did people like this get elected into positions of power? I just want to know, because every day I wake up in the morning and go, a 5-year-old would be able to look at this map and say, why would he even suggest this? We're going to move on to Mark Carney today. This Gordie Howe Bridge situation is catastrophic for Mark Carney because he thinks that Canadians do not see how dumb this whole thing is. Let's see his response. And oh yeah, I got some commentary.
Hi, question for the Prime Minister, Matthew Skates, the Globe and Mail. Going off a rough translation from an earlier question, you say funding requirements for the streamer's decision wasn't connected to Washington, but it was an irritant for Washington and a change the Trump administration wanted. Your government has capitulated on revenue splitting for Gordie Howe Bridge, digital service tax, and removing funding for American streamers. What has Canada gotten in return for these concessions?
Well, let's do a couple of things. Sorry, I'm going to do a little premise surgery for your question. Let's be clear about the bridge.
Let's be
the bridge.
clear.
First off, the bridge is open. Bridge is open in a region, a narrow economic region that has $300 billion of economic activity.
Let's talk about this He's right. $300 billion. It's one of the busiest, it is the busiest exchange of goods on this route. However, Mark Carney's acting as if the only route that you could take is this brand new Gordie Howe Bridge. But in fact, there's two other routes. There's the Ambassador Bridge right here. There's also the Detroit-Windsor Tunnel. So yes, it probably helps with the congestion having this brand new route. Plus, if there was ever an issue on the other crossings, there's no other options. Now there's a safety net. However, he's acting as if we're gaining $300 billion in new trade, when in fact, it doesn't add anything. It just reduces congestion. And hopefully in the future, it does increase trade between the two countries. Let's go back to Mark Carney.
Activity that goes across land connections between the United States and largely the province of Ontario. $300 billion of economic activity. $6.5 billion cost of that bridge. A agreement that's less than 5% of that amount. Less than 5% of that amount.
Whoa, I'm going to have to stop right there. We are going to have to pay less than 5% of $6.5 billion just to open the bridge. That's over $325 million paid to Donald Trump. Here, Donald Trump, here's some money to open up this bridge. We built the bridge. We're not even getting the money back for the bridge. The U.S. is going to collect all the revenue and split it 50-50 for the next 15 years. Can you please explain to me how this is a win for Canada?
That is then reinvested in support, economic support for that economic activity to enhance that economic activity.
The U.S. says they're going to be investing, but there's zero guarantee that the U.S. is going to be investing or reinvesting. They just said, yeah, we're going to do this, Mark Carney. That's what you should tell your people. We're going to reinvest and make it so that we have more economic, but they're just going to take the money. This entire thing is a joke. And I hope Canadians realize that we are getting hoodwinked by Mr. Net Zero.
So we put that in perspective. That's being pragmatic and moving forward. And we got a bridge that's open. We've got opportunities open. And in terms of where we are as a country, we still have the lowest tariff rate of any country on an average basis. We still have north of 80% of our trade, 85 as we speak today, but north of 80% of our trade is tariff-free with the United States. And we're engaged in discussions with them.
This is so pathetic. It is so pathetic that he's like, we have the lowest tariff rate. Mark Carney has done absolutely nothing since he showed up into our lives. In fact, what is happening with the Canadian Northern Peso? Expert David Rosenberg believes that the Canadian Northern Peso is about to crash.
Well, there's a variety of reasons. The premise is really just based on pure math because the lack of productivity growth in this country in absolute terms, in fact, it's running negative. We're fundamentally bearish on the Canadian dollar. But we talked about not just moving to 150, but barring something significant internally in the economy. If these trends continue, if this gap continues in terms of relative unit labor costs, we're not just talking about stopping at 150. We'll probably have to go to 160 or 62 and a half cents, which is
It's not just David that thinks the Canadian loonie is toast. Kelshi Finance, 1 million views, posted, hedge funds have built their largest short position against the Canadian dollar in 2 years. The smartest people around the globe, the hedge funds, are betting against the dollar. That means they're betting against Mark Carney's leadership. But Mark Carney's not worried about the Canadian Northern Peso crashing because he's positioned himself to become rich off of Canada's demise. He is 91% of his net worth is located in America and only 0.5% located in Canada. So as the Canadian Northern Peso crashes, he becomes filthy rich. Donald Trump knows this. Maybe that's why Mark Carney's like, you know what, Donald Trump, I'm going to give you $325 million so you could open a bridge. We're going to allow you to collect all of the profits and split it 50-50. Oh, and all of that $6.5 billion that it costs Canadian taxpayers to build this bridge, you know what? It's just a minor inconvenience. Let's not forget about the...
We are sharing after Canada is paid back. So we get the revenues, then the servicing of the costs of the bridge and paying the debt of the bridge. And then what's left over, there's a split of that for 15 years.
And yeah, could I have explained it better on a Sunday morning at Stampede? Yeah, with a cowboy hat on? Yes, I could have explained it better.
Secondly, thing that is true is we have the best deal with the Americans. And the third thing that's true is we will get an even better deal.
You imputed something in what I said, which is, you said my positivity about getting comfortable. I didn't say that. I said that's what we want.
We can handle him. We can handle Donald Trump.
Canada Strong will help make America great again.
When was the last time you spoke to the president?
Who cares?
I have to say, you know what the problem with Canada is? Even after an entire year of Mark Carney's failures and flip-flops, millions of Canadians still believe in his leadership, but things are starting to slide. A brand new Angus Reid poll says, how confident are you that Canada's negotiation team, including Prime Minister Mark Carney, to deliver a good deal for Canada on its negotiations with the United States? We went from 51% down to 43%. 50% of Canadians have zero confidence in Mark Carney's ability to get us this amazing trade deal. I guess people are finally figuring it out, that this genius economist can't get it done. So there's no surprise that the Winnipeg Sun has come out with an article that says Mark Carney's approval rating slips to near record low. Well, of course, when you have no deal, you campaign as the only guy that's going to get a deal with Donald Trump. And not only are you getting no deal, you're just throwing a bridge right at them. Here, take the bridge, 50-50 profits. I know we paid for it. Canadians are looking at Mark Carney and they're realizing that this economist is a failure. We're going to move along to mainstream media completely unhinged. Who knows Corey Taniki? He supposedly is a conservative. He represented Doug Ford as his campaign manager. He also was the campaign manager for Caroline Elliott, which just lost. The guy is not a conservative in my view. He's more of a liberal. But check out this next clip. And what is with this ridiculous hat? I guess he's in France, but the French are going to look at him and say, dude, what are you doing? You're not going to believe this clip that I'm about to show you. They think Tamara Leach is somehow redrawing the map in Alberta and working with the U.S. administration. They're completely unhinged.
I noted that Tamara Leach is seeking a court a permission from the court to be able to go visit the White House. And was a guest of honor at the U.S. ambassador / clown / assholes garden party on the 4th of July.
Yeah, she's likely negotiating the terms of the new territory of Alberta.
So
it's a full three-ring circus over there.
Let's be real about what's going on. I think you're barking up the right tree there, Jordan. This is about trying to not only divide the country, it's trying to interfere in the Alberta referendum, because the U.S. would love to see Alberta separate, because they'd like to have, a Puerto Rico of the North, with lots of energy resources and no political power. And for any of the Albertans out there who want to play that game, as you've said before, David, go talk to your friends in South Dakota how much political influence you have. When you're the 51st state, it's not going to be pretty.
The Americans who are fomenting this are not thinking about Alberta or Albertans. They're not doing this because it will be in the best interest of Alberta. They're doing it because it's in the best interest of America, and it's a divide and conquer strategy. And Alberta may be last on the menu, but they'll be on the menu.
That's actually very rich by this people. Oh man, from the left, he's no conservative speaking like this. By the way, do you actually believe South or North Dakota is complaining about having like a 50% higher standard of living than Canadians? Our standard of living in Canada has fallen off the cliff. If you were to join America, you would immediately get 50% pay raise overnight. The Toronto Star came out with this graphic, thinking they're just so smart. Polyev making a trade deal with Donald Trump. I'll trade with you Ballistic Avenue for all of your properties, all your houses and hotels, and all your money. That's a good deal. You know what's kind of funny? Is that this is the leader of the opposition. He doesn't deal with Donald Trump whatsoever. He's keeping Mark Carney and the Liberals accountable. Mark Carney's the one that's in charge of dealing with Donald Trump and the trade deal. It should be Mark Carney right here. This whole thing would make perfect sense, but this just shows you how scared and fearful they are of Pierre Poilievre. In my opinion, mainstream media is completely out of control. Luckily, the internet exists and somebody already replaced the graphic. Now this makes perfect sense. So the Liberals really like all these cartoons, so they created this cartoon next, and this one's going parabolic as well. I saw this and I said, you know what? Let me fix this graphic. There you go. This one makes perfect sense now. Do you see how much fun we could have with these liberals? And the internet is having so much fun. We see the liberal and mainstream media come out with all these memes and graphics. Now the political right is coming out with their own. Let's see how they handled this. Carney negotiating with Trump. I'll take 50% of the tolls and half of your spine. That's a good deal, says Mark Carney. Oh boy. The problem with the lefties is the people that have common sense make the best memes. That's it for today's report. I'm happy to be back in the filming studio. I have some big things coming. For example, just tomorrow, I'm going to be interviewing Carrie Lynn Finley, the new leader of the BC Conservative Party. I only have her for 30 minutes, but if you want me to ask her any specific questions, leave it in the comment section. I'll try to include it in the interview. But don't worry, if I don't include it, I'm going to have her back on my show again in the future. If you liked my video today, like it. It's free. Or hype it, and consider supporting me by becoming a member. In the future, I'm going to do some special stuff for the members of my channel. I'm going to leave you with this. Do you think the Doug Ford and Mark Carney breakup is so that Doug Ford could go after Pierre Poilievre's job? Also, if the Canadian dollar does crash, do you think that's going to be what it takes for Liberal supporters to wake up? I'll be back tomorrow with an epic report. I'll see you on the next report.